Alright, well, hopefully I'm going to show you guys some cool stuff today. This is the 8th river that I've walked in a little over a week, maybe a week. And I know I haven't actually shown catching any fish. I haven't caught any, I haven't landed any fish. I only hooked a few, steelhead, 3. And but I haven't really given it that much of an effort. Like most of the time I've just been walking, snooping. I always look for tracks of every kind of species. And I snoop. You know, like that spot with the falls. It was 3 o'clock when I got there. There's only about an hour left of light, and I wanted to film a whole bunch of it and snoop around. And it's almost like hunting anyway, steelhead fishing. You go in and you pre-scout your spot. You know, you spend a day or two pre-scouting and fishing, and then learn the runs, learn the area, see where you want to be for first light in the morning, and you go and you do your thing. And it's funny, one of the rivers I went to, the Cowichan River, I caught a lot of steelhead in that river. I used to drift in my drift boat. I've been there for years. And the amount of guys that saw in that river and drifting it and fishing on from shore was unbelievable. I would have never dreamt in a million years. And then after talking to a few of the guys, sadly the quality of the steelhead fishing has just plummeted. And that's sadly the case for many rivers in British Columbia, because unfortunately British Columbia, the ministry is one of the worst examples of natural resource conservation management there is, period. And it's a real sad state of affairs, especially with steelhead. There's no money in steelhead fishing, right? It's not a big commercial industry they can sell. But anyways, before I go on that tangent, that took a bit of the wind out of my sails. I also lost a couple days there. I got one day, I think I managed to find a spot to myself for first light. I think my third cast out, another float came over and cast it right over my line. And here's a guy standing there about 15 yards to my left. I'm like, oh man, really? The whole river. And then, so I took 2 more casts and started to walk down river to go to another spot. And I bumped into 2 more guys walking up to that spot. And then I walked down a little farther. And then 4 guys, shoulder to shoulder, were coming up the river, heading toward where those guys were. And then all those otters came up in front of me. So, but it's fun though. It doesn't matter to me. I've caught enough steelhead. I don't have to catch a steelhead for it to be successful for me at this stage of the game. Just being able to go out and walk the trails, walk the rivers, and snoop around is frickin' soul food for me. And then, and at the same time, I like to film stuff to share with the world who doesn't get to see all this, especially these times during this pandemic bullshit too, right? So, but anyway, I'm gonna go hike this river behind me here. And where am I? I'm up the Squamish Valley. It's the Squamish River behind me. And I've never fished it. But coincidentally, side note, this chunk of river right behind me, I think it was a year ago, last year, a lucky person with a video camera videotaped a few black wolves chasing elk right into the water right behind me. And there's higher water. I think it was in the fall after the big rains. So I always have this camera I'm looking at right now. I always have that on a tripod in one hand as I'm hiking at all times. And I was a little slow in the draw with that eagle downriver here. It had a big fish in its talons and it was in the water, awkwardly going, trying to get to shore. And I'm like, oh my God, 1 in a million. But my camera was packed away in my bag, wrapped around and closed in the back seat, fishing gear on top of it. I'm like, oh man, I didn't get it in time. But anyway, I always think of funny things, not funny things, just little side notes to share with everybody, get your brains spinning. And when you get to the topic, the Sasquatch topic, which is predominant topic on this channel at this point of the game, for all you people that might unfortunately get sucked into debating whether or not these things exist with people who just can't wrap their heads around it, which obviously I advise all you people, just don't do it. The people that do not want to take in and grasp the realities of what's really going on this planet, don't waste your time with them. All right, it doesn't make sense to. The people that, just like I said a dozen times, the people that come here and jump up and down and stomp their feet and fists on the keyboard and demand proof. There is no proof. Well, I've said to those people a zillion times, this place isn't for you. Carry on. You know, the amount of proof available is overwhelming. The amount of effort put forward to suppress that truth is double overwhelming. All right. But as a fun way to get your point across to these people, you can drop on them, invite them to take the, you can call it whatever test you want. I was joking to myself, thinking it up, saying, oh, I know. Well, how about we'll give everybody a crack at taking the how stupid am I test, or the dumb test, or the intelligent test. And this is the test, all right? Let's just say you've got, whatever, you got $50,000 cash in your hand and you have to place it on a bet. All right? You have to. You got 50 grand, you're going to place it on a bet. This is the intelligence test, okay? Play along. You have 50,000 cash, you have to place it on this one bet. And the answer is going to be one of two answers available. One is the existence of these beings is 100% factual real, or two, they're not. All right? And the payout, if you're correct, is going to be 10 times the amount in your hand. So we're looking at a $500,000 payout. Let's just make it fun, all right? Now, here's the only clues you get. You're an intelligent being. You've got the 50 grand. You're throwing it down on the bet. You got to choose which way your bet's going to go. Your only clue is there is over 10,000 eyewitnesses unrelated to each other spread around the globe who have seen these beings firsthand. All right, that's your only clue on how you're going to make this bet. Now, you're going to throw down 50,000 cash, payouts 10 times if you win. You got 10,000 eyewitnesses that have seen these beings around the globe. These people are unrelated. They describe the exact same thing. Similar description. Now you have to bet whether or not these beings are a real being or make-believe. How smart are you? How are you going to make that bet? What's going to make you throw your money down to place that bet? All right? You're either going to throw it down and deny the truth. You're going to deny the facts. You're going to deny, I should say the facts are truth, but you're going to deny the existence. You're going to throw all that money down. You're going to wager $500,000 against 10,000 plus eyewitnesses around the globe, unrelated with each other, who have described the exact same thing for basically generations since human time began. Where are you going to place that money in that bet? Right? And there's no other discussion about it. You have to place your bet. You got to throw that 50 grand down on one or the other. Either A, nope, it's make-believe, it's a lie, they do not exist, or B, you're going to either A, you're going to throw that 50 grand down on the table against 10,000 eyewitnesses thinking you are correct that these beings do not exist and it's all make-believe, and you're going to wager potential winnings of $500,000 and you're going to bet against 10,000 eyewitnesses. How smart would that be? What's the smart bet? Right? Am I making any sense? Tell me if I am or not in the comments below. Do whatever you got to do. It's funny using these rubber worms, pink rubber worms are very effective on steelhead. They love them. But you get a lot more bites without hookups than you do hookups by far. It makes it tough to video, solo video catching a steelhead too, or steelhead fishing, or catching a strike on video. Who knows how many casts you got to make before you come across one and hook it, right? But I just had one hammer it in this pool beside me about 15 minutes ago. It's funny when you're steelhead fishing, especially they're very tough fish to catch in British Columbia. There's not that many of them, and you do a lot of walking, a lot of casting, a lot of nothing. So when you finally do get that strike, it just sends like 25 volts through your spine. It's pretty exciting, and then I can't help myself. I like to video the outdoors. I like to capture everything I see in the outdoors and share with everybody. And then as soon as I got a strike, what do? I switch up and I put the GoPro on the rod and I chuck the GoPro out there, and I must have done 5 or 6 casts with the GoPro to see if I could film what might be down there, and I won't be able to find out till I get home. And that excites me. I love doing that. I've caught a lot of fish, you guys. A lot of fish, a lot of species of fish over the years. I don't have to catch a fish. I'm at that point where you just appreciate every frickin' second you have being alive. You appreciate every moment of freedom you get to do this. And then you as well appreciate being able to share with everybody on the planet, right? It's not, what's that saying? It can take many years before the the fisherman realizes it wasn't the fish he was after, right? And there's something to be said about that little statement. But anyways, what do we got? Here we go again. Another. It's from the United Kingdom. There's a lot of people from the United Kingdom tune into this channel and watch and share. Let's see what we got here. Alright, hi Steve, I'll try to keep this short. I'm 47 years old and I have lived in Crewe, Cheshire, England, C-R-E-W-E, Cheshire, England for my entire life. It is a medium-sized town founded on heavy engineering and trains. I worked in a steel mill straight from school, making rolls for Lake Erie Steel, Weirton and Worthington Steel, amongst others, as a grinder/turner. Anyway, this environment was dirty and noisy, the exact two things I hate. So I spent every spare minute fishing and shooting with my dad as an escape. We got to know every creature and sound in our area, and I can honestly say I had never been scared or creeped out in the countryside. When the mill closed, I joined the local police force and still fished and shot as a de-stressor mechanism. I honestly felt that the only thing to be worried about in the countryside was other people. I was wrong. This is not a single story, more a sequence of events which led me to your channel as what happened to me turned me into an armchair hunter. And that's unfortunate to hear, to read. My dad and I were on a large remote dairy farm. A bunch of frozen rocks just broke off and spilt into the water right beside me and made me jump about 10 feet in the air, I'll tell you what. Woo! Farm. Sounded like something was jumping in the river right beside me. Funny to catch those moments on video, right? My dad and I were on a large remote dairy farm late one autumn evening 2019 inside a massive stone barn. We were sitting on straw bales waiting for rats to show from the cattle feed area so we could shoot them with the pellet guns, when a small marble-sized red orb floated very slowly through the barn inside and then out through the window and back in again. This is strange, but it did not trouble us too much. That's pretty strange. The next time we were at the farm, we targeted rabbits and had bagged 12, exactly within the first hour. We stopped shooting and gathered them in a pile to deal with later. Then we walked around the corner of the barn as we heard an odd screeching noise, which stopped as we rounded the corner. Nonplussed, we returned to the spot where we piled the rabbits, and they had all gone, every single one, in a matter of seconds. We were totally mystified. Fast forward a couple of uneventful visits, and we were sitting outside the barn when I needed to go for a pee, so I stood up and walked around the corner, out of sight of my dad. Straight away, I heard a very heavy footsteps on the gravel. I thought my dad was following me, but he did not appear. When I went back, he said, "Did you come back straight away?" As he too had heard the footsteps. We decided to have a look around and then heard the weirdest sound I have ever heard emanating from the woods next to the farm. Think zombie crossed with a wounded animal. This did scare us and we backed off to the buildings. But as we did, so something massive crashed through the hedges and banged into a stack of plastic wrapped hay bales with an almighty thud. This was enough for us and we left. After a week or two, we plucked up the courage to return in daylight and then wished we didn't. I was sat next to my dad looking around when I noticed the branches on some large trees about 60 to 70 yards away being bent downwards as if something really heavy was climbing the tree. Intrigued, I wound my target scope up to 20 mag and scanned the tree. Sure enough, something must have been climbing the tree, but there was nothing visible. I told my dad, who also wound up his scope and saw the same thing. This is impossible. When, whatever it was, had reached a point about 10 feet from the top of the tree, we suddenly got the feeling that it was now watching us. Man, I felt cold. This thing had climbed up there to get a better view of us. We did not know what to do, so we went and locked ourselves in our car and considered calling it into the cops, but what we could actually tell them. By now, we'd had enough, and were about to leave when I remembered I had left my phone in the barn with some other bits and bobs. We both went to retrieve We both went to retrieve as I won't lie, I was pretty nervous, and it was starting to get dark. Then a super bright white light came down from directly above us and only illuminated only the ground between us, even though we were only a few feet apart. We did not dare look up, but I tell you, this was no drone or helicopter. There was no noise. After about 5 seconds, the light went out and we grabbed our stuff and left at record speed. I honestly now cannot face being outside in the remote areas now, and I am lucky my dad bore witness to these events, or I would have thought I was going insane. There are other bits to this, but I've gone on long enough. Steve, thanks for all you do. I'm sharing this in case there is a lone person out there who thinks they are going nuts. You are not. Weird crap does happen. You can share my name. It is Scott Corbett. Keep up the great work. People need to know this stuff. And yes, they do, Scott. And thank you so much for coming forward and being brave enough to share this with all the people through me on this channel. Those white orbs, there's so many of those being seen in so many different places around the planet. It's ridiculous. And I don't know if many of you have been here long enough to remember, I think it was last year, I finally gave it up and I shared the trail camera of photo of the lights, or the eyes, whatever it was, is on my trail camera. And sadly, that is in my absolute favorite place to go hunting, and I still go there. Whatever, it is what it is. I don't know what they are. I've had so many people email me and share with me their experiences with those things, gliding right along a trail right in front of them, head height, all sorts of different scenarios. It's happened, and people are coming forward, and they're brave enough to share it's happening with each other. One day we'll make sense of it. I hope so. What are they? I haven't a clue. I do know one thing. Some very credible people have shared the fact that they have seen these Sasquatch beings with those style of glowing lights accompanying them. Go figure. What is it? I haven't a clue. All right? But far too many people have seen that to deny it and to let it go unnoticed or not talked about. There's another one. Dear Steve, my encounters. First, I've never seen a Sasquatch. I do, however, believe that I've been near one more than a number of times years ago and did not realize what was happening at the time. After all this predated, widespread information on Sasquatch, my only knowledge then was that they were limited to the Northwest, thus no reason for me to make any connection here in the Southeast. In the 70s and 80s, I spent every weekend in the mountains, mostly alone. Most of these times were trout fishing, some hunting. I would hike as far as necessary in order to get to where I wanted to fish. Hiking for the sake of hiking held no interest. The locale was mostly in the Cohutta wilderness area of northwest Georgia and some in Tennessee and North Carolina. While the wilderness area was small by northwestern criteria, it was in the southernmost Appalachians and surrounded by millions of acres of wooded terrain, extending nearly to Atlanta to the south and the length of Appalachian chain to the northeast. I've read of a number of encounters within 30 miles of the area, but only a couple within that area, and neither struck me as very credible. I know the precise spot where one supposedly occurred, and the account struck me as some drunk teenagers. I also had essentially sole access to a very large tract south of there where nobody else was willing to walk to. I hunted alone for 20 years. Being alone in the woods so much with no distractions by others caused me to become attuned to the environment, far beyond normal. I developed that sixth sense to the point that I knew when a snake was near long before seeing it. It rarely failed me. When fishing with others, I was always designated as point man. Somehow I occasionally knew if it was a copperhead or a rattler, thus exactly what to look for. I learned camouflage very well. Once while turkey hunting and watching a flock of hens and jakes feed around me, close enough that the scratching hens were hitting me with debris, I had a cougar stalking the turkeys come within 40 feet of me. Back then, cougars did not exist in the east, according to DNR, USFS, FWS, etc. But a number of us disagreed. The USFSW said my report was the most detailed they ever got. Most important, I learned to be still, truly still. Nothing moving but eyes and little of that. I had chipmunks run over my pants leg. Had 2 does lick the fox urine off the bottom of my boots. Had the trophy buck I had hunted for 3 years stand behind me within 6 feet. I could hear him breathing. When I finally got him in my sights later, I let him walk, as I knew he was mine if I wanted to shoot, but the hunt was the important part for me. I've had many bear encounters, both blacks here in the southeast, one across the street last month, as well both blacks and grizzlies in Montana and Wyoming, having made 26 trips to the area to fish. It was once said that I got drunk and kicked a small black bear in the butt. Not true. I had not drunk a drop. He just pissed me off by being too interested in our lunch while we were fishing. There have been some very close encounters, 25 to 30 feet face-to-face with a medium-sized grizzly, a large grizzly chasing a young moose out of a willow thicket, passing within 40 feet. A small willow thicket with a sow grizzly and cubs. Many days in the Yellowstone, backcountry fishing, some solo. So I know very well what they look, sound, and smell like. I hasten to add that I never felt threatened by whatever it was that I encountered in the southeast. That does not seem to be consistent with other reports. That said, I do recall the feeling that someone else was present. I suppose it could be interpreted as feeling watched. I don't recall any tree knocking, bent trees, etc., but again, it was a long time ago, and I'd never heard of those phenomena and probably would not have noticed. The only time I ever left the woods out of concern was the day I tracked a very large wild boar, Russian type, not feral hog, in 6 inches of snow for half a mile, alone. I jumped him where he lay down, and the body print was about 6 feet in length. I decided I did not want to take him with one of the 44 mag alone, about 3 miles from the truck, and nobody knew where I was. Prudent decision. I may not be too bright, but I'm not stupid. On the other hand, what I would have done with him if I did get him, he probably weighed 400 to 500 pounds. Well, you quarter him up and you strap the chunks in your backpack and you do trips. That's what I do. Okay, a number of times while fishing in the Cohota, I would hear a low chatter or mumbling sound like human voices, but unintelligible. The chatter was intermittent. Caveat, I have tinnitus, thanks to exposure to lots of very loud noises, compliments of Uncle Sam. So today at 76, voices must be in volume sufficient to overcome the background for me to understand. I hear you, man. It's got the same thing. It sucks. The tinnitus was present back then, but not bad. Then it mostly interfered with hearing low-level, high-pitched sounds. A number of times I could hear something paralleling my track. On a few occasions, I caught a smell unlike a bear, but sort of similar. I don't recall it being overpowering as others report, but it was strong. Most of the time I'd cut cross-country as the existing trails, old logging roads back then, did not go to where I wanted to intersect the rivers. Back then my normal carry weapon was a Charter Bulldog, a 44 Special with hand loads. It fits perfectly in my right back pocket. It was more for two-legged threats than for animals. Didn't know about the big two-legged things then. The most memorable instance was, I believe, in 1981, the Friday before Memorial Day. For a number of years, I ritually spent 3 to 4 days alone camped beside the Conasauga or Jack's Rivers before that weekend. I called it my annual attitude adjustment. I fished, sat around the fire, and communed a little with Jack Daniels. Note that I limited that, as being impaired alone in the woods is very bad medicine. Yes, I would imagine it is. In those days, there were a few people who visited that area. I could go days without seeing anyone. As it departed my route to the trail took me to the edge of the river. As I stepped from rock to rock with a 47-pound pack, one rolled underfoot and cracked, went down with a miserably sprained ankle. There I was, alone, 2.5 miles from the car, all uphill with a bum ankle. First decision, ditch the pack? Nope, bears would destroy it. I cut a crutch from a forked branch, patted it with a shirt, and started humping. Most of the way, something was off to the north side of the trail paralleling me most of the way. I definitely heard the voices chattering that time, again, intermittently. In those days, I chalked it up as something associated with the tinnitus, but I never heard them except for when I was in the woods, and only sometimes then. Finally made it to the car, and the damn battery was dead. The trunk had not fully closed. That sucks. I was able to coast a couple miles downhill and sat until the truck came along and allowed me to jump it. I had no time to feel threatened, then or ever. That day was more focused on pain. I carried 4 capsules of Demerol, but never used it. I'm just getting out of there. It just occurred to me as I'm writing this that for about half the distance of the terrain they were traversing that particular day consisted of rhododendron thickets and laurel hells, as the old-timers called them. Mostly so thick you had to crawl through on hands and knees. How could they get through that without sounding like an elephant? There was sound, but nothing like you expect. Today I wonder if they were shepherding me along, sensing that I was hurt. Opinion? I don't recall any vocalizations as they are typically described, but I always camped beside the rivers, and unless very loud, I would not have heard it above the water. The only roar I ever heard was the cougar after it spooked the turkeys. The only sound I could not identify was a high-pitched eow, repeated rapidly several times about 2 seconds apart, maybe 10 to 15 years later. My wife and I walked out of a pharmacy in Dalton, Georgia, and I heard the exact sound in that parking lot. I got really excited and looked around until I found the source. In the back of the pickup truck was a cage with a half-grown cougar cub. What? I waited for the owner, and he turned out to be a wildlife rehabber. After all those years, I had an answer. Again, I never saw a Sasquatch. All I have is old circumstantial evidence. I would be interested in your evaluation. I simply don't know. Today, I absolutely know they are here, they're close, despite what others believe. Yeah, I got laughed at by the only person I've shared this with. Having read many dozens of hopefully well-filtered accounts, as well as many that don't ring true, I have come to the conclusion that they are highly intelligent, perhaps more intelligent than we, but an entirely different type of intelligence. They obviously possess incredible physical capabilities, as well as unequaled strength capability. Another observation is that their retinal response spectrum is much broader than ours, extending well into the infrared range, allowing exceptional night vision. This explains why they so easily avoid trail cameras at night. Again, these conclusions come strictly from reading. As a fair to middling scientist, I have only fundamental understanding of DNA testing, but have been involved in chemical analysis at extremely low concentrations for decades and fully understand the confounding issue. Forget it until there's absolutely positively identifiable reference sample. DNA is essentially worthless. It can only tell us what it is not. The very best it can yield today is unidentifiable, probably primate or something to that effect. Couple that with how easily samples are contaminated, especially mixed with other DNA, degraded by heat, water, and time, etc., and it will be a while before it helps. I wish I could repeat those days, knowing what I know today. My science background dictates that I observe and evaluate objectively. I still get into the woods in the area, but cannot be gone overnight due to my wife's health. There have been a number of recent sightings reported within 10 miles of our current home, and I've driven some of the back roads at night, hoping to get lucky. Or unlucky, what some others might think of that. I may try to contact John Wintersgill, whose sighting is related into your book, near where I was. I tracked him down via the web, and he lives not far from me. Carrie Mitchell, let's not use... Oh, alright, so that was the end of it, and he mentioned a name, and I'm not supposed to share it. And that was it. Alright, there we go. There is another one shared with us. And appreciate you punching that email out. It takes a lot of time, right? And I'm sure everybody else appreciates it here too. I do know some people directly who have heard the chatter as well. Not too far from me, well, more closer to where I live, up over the hill here. And it was a buddy of mine's father and his hunting partner. Well-known taxidermy family, actually, in the lower mainland of Vancouver, British Columbia. And they were up on the back of Mount Currie, and they heard what they described was absolute samurai chatter blazing back and forth between two of these things in the rocks. I think down below them on the back side of Mount Currie. This is years ago when you could still hunt mountain goats in Mount Currie. And they heard it. And so have others, numerous people. Ron Moorhead recorded it. It's been recorded, I think, numerous times, has it not? More than a few times for certain. And let's face it, they got speech, they have brains, they have emotions, and they have absolute high intelligence, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I know you know what you heard. If you didn't know what you heard, you wouldn't have emailed into this channel, and you wouldn't have sought out this channel either, right? Alright, here's another one. Hi Steve, my name is Louise. I'm a 51-year-old Mexican-American, and I live in a small town along the Sao Platte River in Colorado. I've been watching your videos for a couple years now, and have emailed you before, but after watching a recent video, I believe I've had more activity than I realized. So let me start by saying that most of my children in my culture are told this old wives' tale about the Llorona. And of course, like most children, I thought that it was just made up to keep children in line, especially at nighttime. It goes like this. A long time ago, a woman drowned and murdered her children in a fit of jealous rage. She then disposed of their bodies in the local river and has been cursed to locate them. So she wanders the waterways, crying and screaming for her children as she takes others' children when possible, so we are warned not to hang around the waterways at night and not to cry or whistle because she will show up and try to take an unaware child. Now I believe the story is made up to explain the Sasquatch phenomenon along the waterways by my ancestors. Now, when I was about 8 or 9, we lived with my grandparents, and one night before bed, my grandmother asked me and my sister to get her a snack from the fridge, and of course, as children, we made it the noisiest affair as possible when, while looking in the fridge, we heard tapping on the kitchen window closest to the door. And as children, we let the curiosity get the better of us and opened the split curtains to look out, and there was the biggest, scariest, red-looking face against the glass, and it scared the shit out of us. It was human-like, but with enough indifference to make me believe it was a devil or something, so we started screaming, and our parents came out of the room to see what was going on, and the face was gone. Well, my father went outside the duplex to look around and found nothing. So they tried to convince us that it was just the neighbor. So all these years I believed in these creatures. And okay, hold on a minute. So all these years I've believed in these creatures, and a few years ago I've been doing research until they started showing up around my home. I can hear wall slapping up on the second floor of the house in my bedroom, and also hear the coyote pack noise that sounds supernatural. I've come to believe like Scott Carpenter that by researching them, you're inviting them into your life. And like Scott, I've come to believe that they're the Nephilim, and that they have a supernatural quality about them. I found that prayer, along with sagging of my home and property, keeps them less intrusive. My neighbor also claims to have seen these beings up in the neighborhood trees. I truly believe that people need to be warned about even just curiosity can have consequences. Anyway, Steve, it's okay to use my name, and good luck out there, brother. I'll be praying for you. Keep the truth flowing. Right on. Thanks, Louise. Appreciate that, man. And Scott has got a lot of experience looking into this topic, and I trust him with my life, and so should you. Obviously, when you go online, man, it doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, or what you got to share. There's going to be people out there hating you and trying to discredit your name. It's just the way it is. Some of the things that get complained about on my channel will just make your head shake at times. There isn't any aspect or anything that is delivered online openly to the public that won't somehow trigger someone on the planet to get upset about. Absolutely nothing. From the way you speak to the sounds in your video, the music in the background, whatever, it just doesn't matter. There's going to be people out there to try to discredit people, and a lot of people have tried to discredit and attack Scott, and obviously shit piles have tried to discredit and attack me, David Plattis and others. Oh well, it is what it is. But anyway, I was starting to read it a little odd there because I definitely heard something back here in the timber as I was reading. I was trying to ignore it while I was reading, and it kind of made me start reading a little faster and not so accurately. So, whatever is what it is. I hope I read that smoothly, so I don't have the time to read it again. Let's see what else I got here. Daylight's burning. I'm liking this overcast. I love overcast. Overcast is way better for filming. It brings out the colors more, no shadows. Doesn't overexpose anything. The white balance is easier to control. And I love it for still hunting in the timber. I hate being in the timber when it's sunny out. Actually, when I'm trying to find something when I'm hunting, as an example, there's nothing worse than still hunting in the timber when it's sunny and bright out because the shadows are everywhere. Things hide very, very easy on sunny days. Overcast, not so much. You can see everything when it's overcast. It's way less shadows. The colors really stand out, and you can tell what's a stump or isn't a stump far sooner and far easier, right? So far, I haven't even seen any elk tracks. There's one lone buck deer when walking down the beach here within 24 hours. There's some old human prints over there that have been rained on, so it's probably a few days old, but that's it. Other than that, there's no tracks in the ground. Some bobcat was on the snow back there. Walk along the river edge, probably look for a dead salmon. That's it so far. I was hoping to find some elk. We might yet before I go home. I'm a ways away up the valley here, so I'll be stopping at other places on the way back and filming. Hey Steve, my name is Kip Torres, and I have some encounters to share. It is my opinion that forest people share a hive mind. Beginning with my first encounter, it seems like they chose to make themselves known to me since my first encounter began in Oklahoma. Oklahoma. You know what? From what I read and what you see, Oklahoma's got to be one of the creepiest states on the planet to live in. The amount of shit that goes on in that state is incredible. I've been to Oklahoma with a friend of mine. He was team roping and buying horses and stuff. Road trip there from Dallas, and it's just mind-boggling the amount of things that go on in Oklahoma. And was it eastern Texas, northeast Texas? After being put on insulin, I lost my hard-worked for six-pack in just a month. I traveled as a sous chef and had just completed a posting for another sous chef on a sabbatical in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I accepted my next tour of duty in York, Nebraska, and told my new employer that I had a bucket list of long-distance pedal. What I didn't tell him was I wanted my six-pack stomach bag. He told me that he thought it was a cool idea and gave me 20 days to report in. Turns out, I did it in 8 days. My story begins September 1st, 2016, outside Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and it was about 3 a.m., and I was beat. I looked to the lower left where a machine shop or mechanic shop sat across from an old wheelless boxcar used for storage, with several ponds behind that. I went behind the boxcar and sat my tent up, no stakes. Pulled my bike inside and sat in the dark waiting for the wind to come down. Suddenly, this horrible smell hit me. It smelled like rotten onions, sulfur, rotten meat, and garbage. My first thought was skunk. Have you ever stood next to a buffalo or an elephant? They make the ground tremble when they walk. I'm an outdoorsman, have been all my life. I know the difference between a quadruped and a bipedal creature, what they look, sound, and feel like. Right then, I felt bipedal footsteps not a foot away from the wall of my tent walking by. I couldn't get my head around what the F was going on. Then it tripped over the corner of my tent and flipped my bike onto me. I was scared shitless. I didn't know what it could be, and all I had was a hatchet and a good-sized buck knife in my belt, but I wasn't about to duck my head out and look. The next morning, when I climbed out of the tent, I could see footsteps going towards the ponds through the hip-high grass. The thing was, the stride was at least 5 feet apart. My brain was trying to make sense of this. Yes, I'd heard of Bigfoot when I was 4. I'm 56 now. I lived in Texarkana, Texas, when the Boggy Creek thing happened. But I thought it was just all a bunch of hooey. That's when I began doing research. Fast forward to 2018 Oregon, Umpqua River near Loon Lake. Myself and a female went camping, and I'd been onto this place before, just followed my nose. While setting up about 300 feet from the top of the mountain, I noticed right away that it was dead quiet. Nothing moving, nothing alive. Dead quiet, and made mention of it. While scavenging for firewood, kindling, I had packed up everything around the tent, everything down to the smallest twig. So that night about 2 a.m., while the chick next to me softly snored, I could hear movement coming down the incline from 2 directions to the right and left. At my head, I could hear something stealthily creeping up, snapping small twigs underneath the grass. There was a crack to see out between the rainfly and the tent, but I couldn't make myself look. It's like I was frozen, listening to it get as close as a couple feet away. Then I heard the rattling of kitchen implements on the camp table. Right then, the chick sat straight up and said, "What was that?" I didn't know she had been awake, too. We didn't hear anything scatter, nothing. We got up, looked around, then went back inside. About 20 minutes later, we heard from the top of the mountains the sound of an owl, if he was a 20-foot owl, that is. It was so loud we could feel it in our rib cage. It lasted, rising in pitch, about 8 seconds. After that, dead quiet for the rest of the trip. Fast forward to July 2020, close to the Rogue River, on a property I lived on outside Shady Cove, Oregon. I was sitting outside my motorhome just looking off in the distance at nothing at all while chatting on the phone with my cousin in Nebraska. Suddenly, something caught my eye. You know the superhero Flash? The tracer that goes behind him while he was hauling ass? From about 150 yards, I see this dude hauling ass along the tree line with that tracer behind him. If it wasn't for the tracer, I wouldn't have noticed it. I've heard they move fast, but nothing prepared me for that fast. So about 40 seconds later, while I'm telling Cuz about what I just saw, I could see him casually walking the way he had come from, just inside the tree line. It felt like it was done intentionally, like he wanted me to see him. Fast forward to that coming spring. COVID has reared its ugly head and wanted to be away from everybody, so I bought a generator, water barrels, and fuel cans, and all my camping gear, and loaded up the motorhome and went way up behind a Lost Creek, Lake Oregon. I was the only one on the mountain I chose. While living off grid, I found a large rock in the shade of a Sasquatch head. What? While living off grid, I found a large rock in the shade of a Sasquatch head, complete with the nose. So I painted it to look like a Sasquatch from my sister's porch stones. It remained on my little craft table for a few weeks, and that's when the activity started. I have a kitty that camps and hikes with me. Pretty cool little dude. I introduced myself and Hot Rod to the forest people and thanked them for allowing us in their home. I have a list on my phone of every native tribe's name for them, so every morning I would greet them with every name. Soon I started finding gifts on my steps in the morning: an orange feather, a blue jay feather, a raven feather, a green rock, a red rock, and I could find nowhere else in that mountain, as well as snow white bleached bone. One morning after watering my plants along a ridge, I could hear the rustling come up the canyon wall. The madrone were dropping leaves, and it was unmistakably bipedal, a group of them coming. So I stood up and went to the edge of the ridge to look down and wait. From behind me, what sounded like 20 feet inside the tree line, there were heavy limbs from clear coat from a past fire. There was loud stomping on limbs. It should be said that I'm not afraid of anything. I don't know if that makes me stupid or brave, but the second, all I felt was abject terror. All I could do was sit down on a rock and look at the ground. I've never been that afraid in my life. Soon it lifted, then it went away. It's common knowledge that they'll use distraction to draw one's attention away. Another thing, they would mimic birds. Badly, it was hilarious. They would mimic, say, a woodpecker, and then another would reply with a hawk. I don't think they know that birds of different species don't communicate with each other. I would sometimes hear the knocking of a woodpecker, if it was a 20-foot woodpecker, and another would answer from the bottom of the mountain. Lastly, one moonless night while I was watching a movie with the windows and blinds open, there were 2 knocks on my window. Keep in mind, my windows are almost 6 feet off the ground. Now, with all that being said, the give mind. How would they know to make themselves known since my first encounter came from Oklahoma? I guess it should be said that my grandmother had the third eye. I do, as does my son. We just know things. I don't know how. I know, I just do. I seem to attract ghosts and spirits. I don't know why. I just do, since I was about 13 years old. I feel it's something to do with them make themselves known to me. I've never felt threatened by them either. My gut says they're not from this planet or dimension, i.e. infrasound, my speak, and the pixelated camouflage they do amongst many other things. Think about this. The size of their skulls, a larger brain. They've likely been here since before the Ice Age. Mayhap they're the true natives. Thanks, Steve, for taking the time to read this. Feel free to share it and my name, since it's not my government name. Take care. Government name. All right, man. Good for you if you are living free. I envy you. And that's a good. That's a good chunk of experiences, to say the least, right? It's kind of weird when they start tapping on the window. You know, I'm sure many of you read or listened to that story I shared with you when I was in my 20s in that cabin alone, and something started beating on the back wall of the cabin above my head, and it shook the wood stovepipe. It scared the absolute crap out of me. I think there was one two other windows in that room I was in, and they didn't have any curtains on or anything. It was just pitch black outside, so I'd imagine they were laughing their asses off and scaring the piss out of me. But anyway, keep them coming, you guys. This is the official round table of knowledge, the open round table of knowledge. I kind of like that one. Came up with it a few emails back. And again, I would strongly encourage everybody to not come to this round table like you're entering a war, because you're not. This is all good, hardworking, honest people sharing knowledge with each other. That's all it is. And if you come here with the warrior attitude, like you're going to war with everybody here, you're gonna lose. That's all there is to it.